How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty
Thanks for
good.
having me.
Anytime, anytime. And especially, it's nice when there's somebody with the same name, so it makes things a little easier. So,
That's true.
yeah, let me ask you this: do you go by Joe or Joseph? Which one do you prefer?
Either is fine.
Either's
People
fine.
usually call me Joe.
Okay,
Joseph, I
that's
guess, is too long.
yeah, the same way. When people are mad at me, they call me Joey. So, but anyway, yeah, for the audience, you're subject to two Joes today, so we hit our quota for the year. It's great. But for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah. My name is Joseph Machado. I've been in the data space for about 10 years now. Started back in the MapReduce Java world. Kind of went through the evolution of the whole industry, Spark and Airflow and so many tools. So
A lot of
started
tools.
off there. Now I'm here. My primary focus has been data platforms and setting up systems that other teams can use. So I started off building pipelines and then moved into more of a lower level role where I set up the infra and the kind of good best practices, if you will, for other teams to build pipelines on. So that's me. Currently taking a break from working, uh, just kind of figuring out what to do next base.
Okay.
So that's me. And yeah, as Joe mentioned, I do blog pretty frequently on my website, stardataengineering.com.
Yeah,
That's me.
yeah, yeah. I think you're doing some great work too.
Thank you.
It's how you came on my radar. Is your we both I think I guess inadvertently teach or I guess explicitly teach data engineering, but in different flavors. And your name kept popping
Yeah.
up on my radar as somebody who's greatly respected um, in the content space. I guess did you walk me through that? You know, your start data engineering blog. Like what prompted you to start that?
COVID.
Okay.
So when COVID hit, I was working at a startup and they went full remote and I had 2 hour extra as commute. And I was like, okay, what do I do with these 2 hours? So I decided to just write about data engineering. And I try to write stuff that I would have used a few years ago. So not something that I'm working on right now, but something that someone like me, a couple of years behind me, would find useful.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah, there was a lot of good reception because I do think at that time when I started, there wasn't not a lot of software based approaches for data engineering stuff. So it was all vendor tool focused. So I try to do more kind of following software engineering practices in my posts. So
Yeah.
people seem to like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I felt like yeah, a few years ago the amount of content out there for data engineering it was pretty bad actually.
Hmm.
I think it's probably why it sounds like that's one of the reasons you started your blog. It's one of the reasons I decided to write a book on it. Was it felt like that if you typed in like what is data engineering or how do I learn data engineering, it was a lot of you should use Pig and Hadoop
Yeah.
and you should
Oh
maybe
man.
learn like Flume or something. Or it's
Oh
either
boy.
outdated stuff
Yeah.
like that, or it's like data engineering is the use of Spark, and I'm like, I don't think that that's all it is.
Hmm.
That's, but yeah, I felt like the content back then was it was pretty bad, and so you would see a lot of especially beginner data engineers get into the field, and I think have a, kind of a rough go getting started. So it's a different
Yeah.
world.
No, that makes sense because your book I think really hits the spot with people helping people understand what even is data engineering because people were equating data engineering with tools as you said Spark or Snowflake, but I think your book is like really helpful to someone starting to know what it is and how to think about the life cycle, things like
Yeah.
that. So
But yeah, and I think it's interesting. I think we're almost kind of yin and yang in some ways. Like I hit sort of the broader thing, but you don't want to write a book that's really tool specific. At least I don't think so because
yeah.
it ages itself really well. But like your blog is like the perfect thing for that kind of material where you know it's like probably some of the best tutorials I've seen. So
Thank you.
um, yeah, how did you get into like writing uh, content? Were you always good at writing and describing things, or what was kind of the evolution of Joseph Machado and becoming, you know, a great educator?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is dumbing it down quite a bit.
Mm,
So if I start with something super complex, like, oh, this is how you do CI/CD, hot reloading, and continuous integration, things like that, and oh, this is the state you have to be aware of. You need to monitor Java processes with these tools. People are not. It's hard for someone new to. It's easy to get overwhelmed and scared. So I think what helps people is stating things in like English, if you will. So instead of saying Spark, saying like processing large amounts of data and using multiple computers. That's basically what Spark is. So kind of explaining what a tool or technique is actually used for and why to use it and its caveats. I think people respond really well to that. Also keeping things to the point because not everyone is going to read through like 7,000 word posts. You have to make sure you hit the main points right up top, deliver value immediately. So when someone looks at the first page, they need to be able to understand what it is that they are going to read about. So
Hmm.
I didn't start like that. I started big, more complex, very technically challenging, and people reach out saying, "Oh, it's too hard to follow. I get stuck in this." So, kind of making sure the user experience for readers is good. I think it plays a big role. Even now, I see a lot of content, good stuff, but it's hard for people to grasp because people write for themselves, not for others. So when you write for yourselves, it's easy, but when you write for others, you need to kind of think about where they're coming from, where they're starting from. So I think
Hmm.
that is something that I've learned over the years. It's very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. Something that's good empathy. Um,
Hmm.
Because I feel like, yeah, some articles I've seen you know, maybe it's something for everybody, right? But some of them are technical deep dives, and others aren't technical enough. Like, you know, I've seen some airflow tutorials, like this is airflow, and I'm like, that's cool, thanks. Didn't really help at all. So you got to kind of hit that sweet spot. But that's it's good to
Hmm.
listen to feedback too, because I think all too often people are authors don't listen to the audience enough, and the audience forgets
Yeah,
after a while.
I
So,
think even at work, right? Like if I'm talking
mhm.
to someone who's not super into like the software side of things, we have to talk to them in terms that they would understand. So something that has helped me over the years for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So, what were you doing before data engineering? Like, how did you get into the field?
So I went to school for electrical engineering, but I
Okay.
did more of network analysis type stuff. So kind of analyzing how signals propagate between networks um, in wireless communications. It's in the electrical engineering side of things, and that kind of led me to MATLAB,
Oh
surprisingly,
yeah.
and MATLAB to Python, and then I got into software engineering. I used to do backend engineering. That's right about when data science was all the rage. So I tried to get into data science. I did data science. I was a data scientist for a year, but I realized there is the outcome from data science was not tangible to me. I couldn't
Mm,
see what's happening. Like it just okay, made some presentation, numbers go up. What do you do with this? I wasn't seeing an outcome from there, so switched over to data engineering. Pretty, I feel like there's an end goal. You can work towards it. It's more well defined. It's not just exploration. It's more about delivering
mm.
um, some sort of product. So that's how I got into data engineering, and that's how I've been. I mean, it seems like you had something similar of an
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah. Very very similar. I mean, I guess my background has always been in quote data science. It wasn't really ever called that, but it was basically doing the same stuff that
Hmm.
whatever you call data science now. But I noticed like when the official data science craze started hitting in the early to mid 2010s, like
Mm.
companies were clamoring for data scientists,
Yeah.
and I often notice that you know there was either pretty shoddy data or like sometimes no data
Mm.
upon which to do your science, whatever that is, and so you know you kind of get into data engineering out of necessity. I mean, I got into it like I think data engineering. It's kind of more ML engineering actually, right in 2012 or something like that. So like we
12.
were doing a lot of I was working at very early automated machine learning startup, and we were trying to do um, automated machine learning, except that it was very mechanical Turk at the time, having people involved. And I was like, why don't you figure out a way to automate a lot of the feature processing, right? Because that was like a huge
Hmm.
bottleneck. You have all these PhDs working on this stuff. It's a waste of time. So I built something that did that, and then it's when I kind of got the bug of just I think thinking about workflows in that way. It wasn't really thinking about the algorithms because I think I realized like the algorithms is actually the easiest part relative to a lot of the piping that you have to do to make all this work. So I think early on kind of got the bug on it, but then yeah, like it was like data scientists were hired to do exploratory data analysis, and I guess I would sometimes do that, but got really bored. It's like I like to design and build stuff. So yeah, data engineering was more of a necessity just because there wasn't any other way you're going to do your job if you don't
Right.
do it. So yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is.
That's interesting because I remember my first data science project was also automating feature engineering
Oh no way.
step. So yeah, I had to build a loan detection, like who's gonna default what percentage of risk.
Okay.
So we had to feature engineer similar stuff, automate some parts of feature engineering, build the pipeline. So yeah,
That's
that was
interesting.
actually one of my first projects.
You know what? I think that was one of the data sets I worked on. Oh, it was loans.
No.
I think it was for like loans. The loan industry kind of can be pretty shady depending on what you're working in.
Oh yeah.
Like I think this one was like one of those high interest like loans for like furnitures and stereo
Mhm.
equipment companies. They're like, we want to figure out who to give loans to, and I'm like, it
No.
seems like you give loans to everybody. I don't know that you need a model for this. Like, you just like
It's yeah, it is.
it's an interesting one. Yeah, and I think the credit scoring ones are they always, it's always like the classic one. I
Yep.
think back in the day, everyone is still trying to do, and people are doing it today. But yeah, but yeah, data engineering back in the day, I'm calling like this is like mid 2010s or whatever, or to kind of
Hmm.
like 2020. It was definitely pretty archaic. Feels like it's getting the practices have definitely matured a lot
Yeah,
since then.
for sure. I also think, I mean, the practices have definitely matured a lot of people with experience and expertise over the years, but I also think there's a explosion of tools that's
Yeah.
just causing a lot of chaos, if you will. Like,
Hmm.
you don't really, sometimes things get pushed for some reason and people buy stuff that they don't really need. It actually adds to the complexity and slows down your feature delivery speed quite a bit. I've seen that in a couple of organizations, like setting up Airflow and you have three cron jobs running once a day, simple jobs. You probably are not going to need that, you know. So,
Are you talking to people that set
so
up Airflow to run the cron jobs?
people set up Airflow to run like three jobs. There were like three jobs running once a day. And it's pretty straightforward script. It's just
Yeah.
one Python script, and they had to set up Airflow, and you don't need Airflow for that because the whole maintenance of Airflow takes up so much DevOps time. So
Yeah.
things like that, it's a little bit demotivating when you see like all these unnecessary complexities. But I do understand for like bigger companies, they do we do definitely need it. But for smaller companies, copying the bigger ones, it's like you don't need Kafka if you have like 50 queries per minute. You know? So yeah.
Oh,
It's,
that's
it's
interesting.
interesting. Like, I guess like software has always been like that. There's a lot of moving components. So keeping it simple is always good, especially in the infra part.
Do you feel like engineers just want to engineer?
I think part of it has to do with like the coolness factor and also resume. You need to have some tech. Like if you want to get hired at a bigger company, which obviously pays more, you need like, oh, I process 2 terabytes of data with Spark. You, it counts more than, oh, I process 2 terabytes with just Python, not costing the org thousands of dollars. So, yeah, I'm not blaming anyone. It's just the way it is right now. So it's more of a systematic thing, I think.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of in data science too. Like people would throw deep learning at all kinds of problems where you, especially on like tabular data sets or like XGBoost
Hmm.
would do just as fine. Um,
Decision trees always get you
yeah.
like almost all of the way there.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's not the cool stuff, right? You're not gonna say, "Oh, I use a random forest." Like that's cool. Can you go get lost in the forest while you're at it? Come back. So it's interesting. Yeah, like what are some of the things you? I mean, are you talking to data engineers on a pretty frequent basis these days?
These days, I mean, I'm just, I don't have a job right now, so I'm just trying to figure out what to do next. But
Yeah,
I do talk to people who reach out to me, asking for like, how do I do this? How do I do that? The biggest thing I see is still the same people conflating tools with concepts.
mm,
um, which I don't blame like an IC for because they have to do that to kind of set themselves up for their next job, and everyone
yeah,
stays at a job for maybe like 2 years and get like 40% more. I don't know how that is right now with the market conditions, but
mm,
that's one of the things I've noticed. Like everyone wants to learn the hot new tool, and just make more money, I guess, with jobs. So that's just what I'm seeing right now. People do want to learn the fundamentals, but they want to know the fundamentals and use some sort of tool to set
yeah,
themselves up.
yep,
So, yeah, that's just what I see. From like a individual kind of perspective, I do see a lot of people from like analytics space and BI space trying to get into data engineering. So they are curious to know more about like the software side of things, how to use Git, how to write pipelines that don't break, that don't cause
mm,
duplicates. So those sort of things, there's a lot of interest as well. Um, in types of companies, um, I think most big companies, they feel the people working at most big companies feel like they have most of their infra set up properly and they don't need to improve it as much. It's more people from smaller orgs who want to set up infra. This is just from people who are reaching out to me.
yeah.
I take a very limited subset, but yeah, that's my data.
That's really interesting. The software piece is interesting. The thing that you mentioned too, where that's definitely the rigor that I'm starting to see more of myself when I talk
Hmm.
to practitioners and work with them. Uh, yeah, like how do I basically become almost a software engineer who happens to be good at data?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think is driving that?
I think, and this is just my hypothesis, I think there's a perception that if you just do SQL, let's say DBT and just Snowflake, your salary is not going to improve as much as if you do like more software driven things like
Mm,
unit testing with PySpark, deploying to Spark, understanding Spark lifecycle. There's a perception. I mean I don't know that based on data, but that's what people are thinking. Because people reach out to me, they say the specific thing. They say like, "Hey, I want to go move to Spark. I've been doing SQL Server, Snowflake, whatever, but I want to, uplevel myself, so I want to go to Spark. Even though Spark might not be necessary, but that's
right.
where they perceive the um, money is or salary is. So people are wanting to move there, and that's one of the main reasons that I think it's getting more popular.
Yeah.
Besides the obvious fact that following more software-driven stuff reduces bugs and things of that nature, increases speed of delivery. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely
it's
seems to be the trend.
mm-hmm.
Noticing the same thing. Like, um, yeah,
Ooh,
it's
sorry, one
almost
more thing. I want to
yeah,
add one more thing. I
yeah,
think there's also a lot of scare amongst engineers about LLMs being able to write SQL. For whatever reason, they think LLMs will take away your job if you're only doing SQL. Um, Part of it may be true, writing queries is, but the hard part, data modeling, uh, it's still going to be human driven at least for a little while, I think. So that's another kind of um, concern that ICs have. That they want to move into more software driven stuff.
that's really fascinating.
Yeah,
That's really
it's.
interesting.
I think it's like a lot of like material online saying, "Oh, LLMs are going to take over your job," or there won't be any data engineers in 5 years, or there won't be any data analysts in 5 years. It kind of creates the anxiety, like
Hmm.
people want safety and stability. That's just human nature. And when you create so much FOMO and fear, what's that, FUD, people want to constantly uplevel themselves. Part of it is true, but I also feel a lot of it is driven by like fake marketing, kind of trying to get
Yeah.
scare people and cause FOMO and get people to buy into some sort of different mindset, which Yeah, it's always going to be like that, to be honest. It's always like that. Back in 2010, people are like, oh, we need to use Hadoop, even if you only had like 10 GB. So it's the same kind of pattern that I see again. It's a different tool, but kind of like the cycle, if you will. I see the same thing. Or
Oh
what
yeah.
do you see the same? There?
Oh, I do. I mean, we've seen this big. There was a big data movement where, you know, if you're not doing big data, some company is doing big data, whatever that happens to mean. I have no idea. But like, if you're not doing big data stuff, then you'll be left behind, right? And so that was the early 2010s, and then you move into mid 2010s and data science. You know, it's like
Hmm.
if you're not doing data science, then you're going to be left behind. Everyone's going to
Yep.
take over, and now I feel like this latest, and it's driven by a lot of generative AI.
Hmm.
It's the same thing. If you're not using generative AI, you're going to be left behind. But I think the difference is now, right? Back in the day, it was that the conversations were more geared towards companies, whereas now it's also geared towards practitioners, saying,
Yep.
these things are going to
That's it.
eat your job and you know put you on the street if you're not staying ahead of it. And yeah, it's fascinating. It was just doing a podcast the other day with was it Nick Schrock and Wes McKinney, and I think they called themselves like data boomers because they're just super skeptical of the whole AI agent workflow and stuff. And I think there's these guys build systems and stuff. So I thought it was a pretty interesting perspective.
Mm.
But then the day before I was I guess I'm name dropping, but chatting with Andrew Ng, but he was showing me these AI agent software workflows, and we're talking about that, and I was like, okay, that's a bit different. Like that's I would say, so there's kind of two camps. For like one, if you're in the AI camp, you're working on agent workflows maybe, and you're looking at the stuff, and you're like, yeah, I don't see any reason why this wouldn't actually do most of the work of a
Hmm.
software engineer. You give it the prompt, and one agent will
Right.
write the code, the next will debug it and test it and all this stuff, and another one will deploy it, and it's like, okay, so yeah, it's interesting, but it feels like you're going to move more from maybe writing to orchestrating, but you still need to understand, I would imagine, what good code looks like and what a workflow would look like.
Um,
'Cause otherwise, like, so so it's an interesting one. But then I talk to other software engineers, just kind of regular, senior staff level, and there's definitely, I think, a sense of hope and a sense of trepidation. Like they don't know what the hell is going to happen. Because it also is like you just need one misinformed hiring manager, or I guess firing manager in this case, to make a decision like, well, I guess we'll just do
yep.
LLMs for everything, and we just need to cut our team by half now.
Yeesh.
So, I mean, that's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it has its uses for like boilerplate stuff, testing and things like that. But for like production code, I would be very cautious to just blindly use it without actually double checking it. But I do recognize that it'll significantly speed up writing code.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure that it's always a good thing. More code, equals more bugs and things like that. And
Hmm.
it's good for like Python, but when you step outside Python and SQL, it gets not as good. Like let's say Terraform or Docker or some other languages, it makes stuff up, and yeah, in regards to like agents and rags, I think people should try it out. Like if you're an engineer and you're concerned, just try it out. I'm like I tried it out and I'm like 95% sure that it's not going to replace engineers because
Right.
you need good data. Oh, the people say like, oh, we
Yeah.
can use RAG to write our BI layer. Well, the input should be well modeled. If the model is not going to be good, your whatever your RAG is going to produce is going to be terrible. But if your model is good, if you work on setting up the solid base, then your benefit from LLM is just going to be faster code generation. So I think people need to understand, solidify your processes, solidify your base foundation,
Hmm.
then for sure LLMs can help significantly. But if everything is shoddy, the base is shoddy, it's going to create mess on top of mess, and then have a lot of people to kind of how to debug that and
Oh
work with
yeah.
that's just what I'm seeing. Um, who knows? Maybe what is that? GPD, what is it? Phi might blow us out of the water, but for now, this is what I'm seeing.
Hmm. Yeah, seeing similar stuff. It's Yeah, I think the current state of it is definitely nothing to, I would say, be concerned about. I would say the
Yeah.
concern would be that it actually becomes widespread precisely because it sucks, um, to a large degree, but people have this false sense of confidence with it. But yeah, who knows? I mean, the question's always like, what's coming next? Like, there's GPT-5, and there's probably GPT-8 at some point. And what does that look like? I don't think anybody knows. I don't even think OpenAI knows, to be frank.
Yeah.
There was that graph that showed like kind of I remember one of the safety researchers, they published that 177-page report paper about
Hmm.
sort of projections, and like AGI will be here in 2027, I think it was, or something like that, at least according to the graph. Like, you just followed the trend line, it was, I don't know.
Hmm.
So it's, yeah,
Well, that's assuming the trend line keep going up.
exactly.
We don't know how many parameters. Yeah, it's a linear. They're assuming linear or exponential, if you will, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. Yeah, I think people should just try it out.
They
It's
should try it out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. Because if you're an engineer, try it out, then you'll get like a feel for what it actually can do.
Yeah.
It's my
Have
it's
you
my opinion.
been getting any interest in content around LLMs? Like, what's the balance of the type of requests that you're getting for content these days?
Oh, almost everything is about data engineering. Very few LLMs, maybe
Mm, interesting.
1%, 2%. But having said that, that's for content. Having said that, I get a lot of messages from people being scared of LLMs. Oh, is it worth learning data engineering? Am I going to get fired? There's a lot of fear and
Yeah.
anxiety among ICs, which is honestly terrible. It's like, yeah, no,
Well,
no more
especially at this point,
comments on
right?
that.
Like, you have that added stress now. Like, the
Yeah,
market, even with that, if you didn't have AI, it would still be a stressful job market.
yeah,
You put that in, and people are just like,
yeah,
do I even like, stay in this field, or do I become a plumber or
yeah.
something? Like, it's, which,
Yeah, I think it's just causing a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of anxiety, and also like people are scared they're going to get left behind. So everyone is like,
mm,
"Oh, what should I do? What can I do to safeguard myself against AI?" So I just hope people kind of try it out and see where things are. I mean, the fear is valid, right? Because
yeah.
as you mentioned, the firing manager may not always be technically uh, adept. They might be someone in management looking at numbers and saying like, "Hey, this company is promising us they will deliver like a fully LLM software engineer. Why do we need to
Hmm.
pay like 150K to hire someone? Well, so you can use like $30 a month." So yeah, it's a lot of marketing driven fear, I think,
I'm curious
for sure.
what sites like Upwork are like right now for kind of freelance engineers or data engineers or data scientists. So yeah, I'm very curious
No,
what that
no
market's like.
idea.
Yeah, I know in copywriting, for instance, where people who write copy,
Hmm.
supposedly like listings are down like 25% or something like that since
Listings are
AI came
down,
out.
but
Yeah,
the output is terrible. Like I
it's
can I if it's terrible. Like when I see something written by LLMs, I'm like, oh, I don't want to read this. It's just a word vomit.
yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, if you want a copy, it's its own thing. I feel like if you write good copy, the audience will be engaged with every sentence, right?
Hmm.
But like LLMs is just like it adds a bunch of like fancy words with no specific reason, and I'm like, I don't want to read this nonsense. But maybe I'm
Yeah.
being a old grumpy guy, but that's just how I feel.
No, I'm in your camp. Like, I use LLMs more as a conversational agent. I think to
Hmm.
talk about a topic because it knows a lot.
Mm.
It's been trained on the entire internet, so it's your chance to talk to somebody who's read 4 million books or something crazy.
Mm.
I think that was one of the stats. Was like ChatGPT is like basically, yeah, it's like 4 million books or something. It's a lot
Wow.
plus articles plus everything else. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
it theoretically has more information at least that it can regurgitate back to you. So that's interesting. Um, but it does help poke some holes in my thinking. It definitely helps with blind spots, and so that's why I use it. But the output of it for writing is, as you say, it's like word vomit. It's pretty bad. Like, and by pretty bad, I'm being generous. Uh, but Claude is actually getting better. Like Claude Sonnet, the
Mm.
one that came out like 3.5, whatever. That's actually coming up with some like, interesting and nuanced answers that I didn't
Oh,
expect.
wow. Okay.
So yeah, like I was like, okay, that's it's like your friend that has some like contrarian views. You're like, oh, that's fascinating, but I don't think I'd use it for writing and for copywriters. I think the article I was reading was, I think it was New York Times or Wall Street Journal, but it was like the copywriters also are being asked to come back in and fix the output. And I think one person said that, yeah, you don't just fix this, you like actually do it over, because it's that bad. So, are you using LLMs in any part of your writing workflow?
Uh, no, I don't. I maybe use it to generate code sometimes, but then it's like I have to tell it exactly what I want to write. So I'll give it like a function signature and exactly what steps to do.
Mm,
But for like the text, I don't use it because it's too verbose and not it
yeah,
doesn't hit the point
yeah.
like I want it to. With a code, it does pretty well on if you give it very specific instructions
Hmm.
in Python. It can write pretty good code.
Yeah.
But you need to tell it what to do. You cannot give it like a just end goal. You need to give it like a pseudocode almost, and then it'll
Hmm.
just write the code. So that's been very, very helpful. And similar to you, I think that's a good point of the conversational stuff. Like I do talk about it, talk about some topics with it if I'm not familiar with it at all.
Hmm.
So it gives me some good pointers and things to think about. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I've been working on this book on data modeling, and I found that it's
Hmm.
been really good. And in fact, we used it last night. I have this data therapy session where people show up for an hour and just rant about whatever. And I think the question really was, somebody brought up a question: is a dimensional model, is a star schema a graph? And I was like, mathematically, no, it isn't. But let's see what ChatGPT says. And it's like it sort of looks like a graph, but it's certainly not one in the classical sense. We have nodes and edges and vertices and
Right.
stuff. So that was so yeah, but it had a good answer for it. So I was like, everyone's like, okay, that's reasonable. So it's interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's funny. Data therapy. That sounds. That's pretty appropriate naming, I think.
Oh, it is. Well, yeah. I mean, because there's this subsect that I have of practical data modeling, and it's yeah, everyone always asks questions. But I noticed when we were doing group discussions, people were showing up and kind of just venting about their jobs. Like, I can't get buy-in from the business. It's always a big one. Nobody seems to understand what the hell we do as a data team. Uh, right? No, 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 no. I'm pretty sure you sounds like
Yeah,
you've heard these before. So.
I've heard those. I felt it a lot of times, but yeah.
Are you getting any questions or, I guess about those types of topics? Like, how do I, explain the value of what I do or justify our team's existence kind of questions? Are you getting any of those?
The, yeah, there is a not a lot, more than LLMs, less than like foundational concepts, but a lot of not a lot, questions about getting resources from management and showing value. Like if you say, so the general feeling, at least from my audience, is that when things work, no one cares about data engineers, but when things break, everyone points fingers at data
That's
engineers.
so true.
So they don't people don't feel appreciated.
Mm,
Like for example, if you're doing like standard product development, you build a dashboard or you build a feature. It's a tangible thing that people can see. It's a new thing. It's like something out of nothing almost for someone who's unfamiliar with tech, right? But when you add like a new column or create a new table, they don't see it with the same level of
yeah.
excitement as a product because product now you can sell. Data, if you're using it internally, it's going to be the interest is not as high as it would have been for like a product feature. So that's something people struggle with. There's not a lot of praise, if you will, for data engineers. Um, yeah, I mean, I've seen that as well at my job. If you go to if I worked at companies where data was the main product, so you build data and then you have a API layer on top. And I
Right.
worked on that. That was really fun. Everyone loved it because end users know how difficult it is to get this data, know what the endpoint is doing and stuff like that. But if it's just an internal team, the kind of validation you get is not going to be as high as the validation that someone in the back-end engineering team or front-end engineering team when they build a new feature gets. So that's just what I've noticed as well. and what my audiences do. No, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's pretty sad, not bad, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you mentioned kind of the data powered products, I guess we'll call them. But
Mm,
I mean that seems to be where it's definitely your chance of um, people understanding, the quote value that you provide. I think it's pretty self evident because without the
yep,
data, you don't have a product.
yep,
We can debate that, or yeah, not you, but the with the business. But it's like, yeah, I mean, if you don't, you kind of need us
yeah,
around. But if it's
and
internal, like,
and
what's that?
hmm no, please go ahead. I was
Oh no,
gonna
what I was saying
go
is
ahead.
like I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, but it was like this. I called it product land and enterprise land. Where product land is sort of the data as a product we discuss, with the enterprise
Mm,
land is sort of the internal facing BI reports
mm,
and stuff, and that's a lot harder to talk about because it's like what's the eternal question that I've always heard, which I've never actually heard answered very clearly, is like what's the ROI of the internal data team, like so and I guess the only way to because you can't really do costing on it to figure out what the ROI is. I mean, maybe you
hmm
could, but it's like, um, I guess the question would be, if you got rid of the data team, would anything happen? I don't know. It's
Yeah,
so
that that's been like a sore point for a long time. I think people are struggling with like kind of their perceived value because people want to be validated at work, and when you don't get it in enough doses, depending on your
hmm
individual, it's a tough. It's going to be tough.
yeah,
And I do think that when data is the main product, um, the data team does not have to deal with like random data that breaks everything.
mm,
But when data is not the main product, oh my God, everything breaks. The upstream decides to change stuff. They won't agree to contracts. They have their own roadmap. I'm not blaming them. It's just the system, right? They have their own roadmap. They have their delivery schedule. When you ask them to do some contract stuff, they're like, "Oh, we don't have the time." When they ask them to fix something, oh, we have to wait 6 months. It's a tough one. It's just like an organizational thing, right? Like
it
if
totally
you're
is.
not important, you're going to deal with BS basically. So
hmm
I think it's critical. Like if you want like a good experience, I would say like find like a backend job that has a lot of data components to it. That has been one of my favorite ones where
mm,
there's a lot of impact and everything you do has a lot of visibility and people actually value that quite a bit. But if you're doing data engineering with other internally and there is not a lot of buy-in from management, it's going to be a tough time. It's, yeah, I'm sure. Have you seen something similar like that
all the
too?
time, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's everywhere too. So, but I think it's just. And it's interesting if you connect this back to the whole LLM discussion too. And I think I think it seems like every company, whether they have a reason to or not, but everyone's jumping into doing AI,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. Um, and so it's an interesting discussion. And some companies I see, it's let's just throw AI on top of everything and just see what happens. Where you might see some wins with that is like things where it's these are data sets that are just like text records and stuff. So like customer support and chat, I think it's interesting. That's where you're seeing, I think, a lot of inroads. That's a pretty natural inroad, I
Yeah.
think. But then the question is, what I'm starting to see is like, let's throw a chatbot on top of our data warehouse or our transactional systems, and ask questions of the data. And I guess my only pushback to that is, you probably already had reports that describe a lot of your business, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people look at the reports anyway. So, but now you want to start chatting with your data to ask the same
Shoot up
questions
the
you
warehouse
were
cost.
getting. Yeah, like, but you already have most of the answers in the reports that you don't look at. So, yeah, that's. I've been seeing that, and it's
Mm.
rattles my brain a bit because I'm like, there's a big disconnect. I think between what people are trying to do and what they're doing. So,
That's a really good point because you already have reports with like well-maintained metrics and everything. Now, if you ask ChatGPT to generate its own version of metrics, numbers will be different. Now you have to go back and match. Yeah, I think people think AI is going to solve a lot of problems, but I'm not so sure at this point that it will. Um,
Oh.
I also think marketing people and people like online gurus talk a big game about AI.
Mm.
But whenever I feel like I say this to everyone who reaches out as well. Whenever you read something online, there's always um, a motivation for that person to write it. So you gotta figure out why that person is writing it. Are they selling something? Are they trying to position themselves as some sort of market leader? If they do, they want to if they want to position like a thought leader, they want to emphasize the importance. They will emphasize it. They won't talk about the negatives.
Right.
So whenever you read something online, always figure out who is writing and what their intentions are.
That's
That I think is critical.
very
If you
solid.
don't, yeah, if you don't critically analyze everything, it's like a what is that? Ship in the wind. You know, you're gonna get blown over wherever. So you need to kind of make sure you know why people are saying what they're saying and what they're. Everything has a trade-off. Like, understand the trade-off. It's my it's my advice, but not a lot of people do that right now.
Oh, it's very wise advice though. But yeah, but it's not the easy advice, right?
No, it's not.
Well, and
It's
it
a
seems
hard
like
sell.
every vendor these days, when you're talking about tooling, and it feels like every vendor now is like throwing some sort of AI on top of it. So, like I think chatbots are sort of that's table stakes now with any tool.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have a chatbot, then like where you been, and so but it's interesting though because think in the context of data engineering, like I'm starting to see some even using chatbots to create ETL workflows. On one hand, I could see how that's interesting. On the other hand, um, I don't know. It seems like the chance of something screwing up might be there, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a definite thing. Like that's my big problem with LLM. It's like directionally correct, but not objectively correct. There might be something that it misses, but directionally it might be right. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
if you just automate it without exact answers, you're going to run into like issues. Then they have to resolve.
Yeah.
Um, one thing. Oh, I was gonna say something about. Yeah, no, never mind. It missed my mind. It's
No
more
worries.
more about this marketing stuff. Yeah, I think LLMs are really good. Try to build something. I tried building a few. It's fine. It's not something world shattering, but I do see people advertising it as such. So it's rough. It's rough. Gotta be mindful of what you consume online.
Always, always. What do
Hmm.
you think about the state of content in the data space right now?
I think there are some good stuff, um, but if you Google, you only get the SEO optimized ones. You need to know who to follow. It's very it can it's I almost feel like there's too much
Mm,
and there's a lot of noise, blah 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 blah, and there are like LinkedIn stuff. Some of it is good. Some of it is has really good copywriting, but it just talks about basic stuff. But those are the ones that do well on LinkedIn because of like algorithmic um, ranking, I guess. I mean, TLDR is there's a lot of stuff. Read it out, try it out, understand the trade-offs, know why who's writing and why they're writing it, what's their intention behind writing it. That'll
mm-hmm.
help you determine if you can trust it or if you need to dig further. Because there's like partial truths and then like full truth. People talk about partial truth. Oh, this is great. Well, what's the downside? Yes, Airflow is great. Yes, Daxter is great. Yes, these are like really cool tools. Why do you need them?
Mm-hmm.
What's the kind of overhead for this? Oh, you have to manage this. You need to monitor this. You need to send alerts if things are down. That's an extra added work. So I need to think about those sort of things. I think people just should always think about trade-offs. Everything in computer science, everything we do has a trade-off. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
that's my opinion. I don't have any strong opinions on individual basis, but
Yeah.
I do think you need to strongly look at everything with a critical eye, especially stuff from people trying to sell you tools.
Oh
Look at
yeah.
that, understand. They will recommend their tools at the very end. That's normal. I'm not saying that's bad, but you need to make sure what you're buying into. Are you buying into something that'll truly help you, or are you buying into a wrapper over some standard Python library? So it's it's easy to get tricked online. So,
Oh yeah, it is. Are there any?
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I mean, I obviously create content. I'm in a weird spot. Like I want to do more tutorial content. I think that'll come later. But I feel like there's a lot of I notice this especially in like the data science and data analytics space, especially where it's like, I've had a job for like a year and I'm going to tell you all about how to be successful in your career. And I'm like, that's cool. And that's probably for some people, but it sort of rubs me the wrong way because I'm like, you don't have a lot of the experience. And this isn't gatekeeping. It's just a fact. Like numerically, you don't have a
Right.
lot of years of experience. Like you're not, you know, I'm old. I've seen things for good or for worse. But like, it's, but I'm not out there making, dispensing career advice. I just think that maybe that's not my shtick, but I think that there's a lot of opinions, and I think the world certainly needs them, but it also feels like there's probably, I think, some underqualified opinions, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Again, not saying, if you feel like you got something to share in the space, go for it. I think the world always needs a lot of perspectives. So I just say, like, as you say, you should pay attention to who you're getting advice from. There's and it seems like there's people that sort of take this approach where it's like I'll teach you SQL in like 5 days or something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
so it reminds me a lot of like the fitness industry, like fitness influencers. Like you
That's
want to get jacked in like a week, um, like so.
that's that's so funny because I was thinking the exact same thing earlier today. I was like, oh, all of fitness comes down to eat less, move more, but then people
Yeah.
make up all this crazy stuff. And I was like, oh, well, wait a minute, that's similar to what we are experiencing.
Oh yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I just
Oh no, it's.
wanted to.
I mean, if you go on Instagram or TikTok, I think it's a lot of the influencer culture is permeating down into data and
Yep.
I've been called a data influencer and I absolutely hate that title because I'm like if I happen to be an influencer, it's completely by accident. It's not like I'm out there trying to be one. Like I'm 47 years old. I'm not gonna be an influencer.
Yeah, it's same.
I'll probably be with a walker sooner than I will be with being an influencer.
But
So, like, it's kind of hilarious in that way. But I got a lot of friends who are doing good. Like, so like, I think Ben Rogojan, Zach Wilson, I think they have their own flavors of doing stuff. But we're all friends, and I think they're also doing a good job at putting data engineering on the map and helping expose people to it.
hmm.
So like that's I'm definitely thankful for
Yep.
them but yeah, the content space is interesting, but it seems to be like there's personas out there who are just kind of doing their own thing, and then I think there's sort of this persona that you have to be if you want to be a content influencer.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know, so that's I don't know, I just can't. Um,
Yeah. I hear you on that. Like, I have been posting on LinkedIn regularly too. There are like techniques you can use to go viral, like memes, and like you need to put up like a hook on the first line.
yeah,
It just doesn't feel like me at this point. It's just like I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to me.
yeah,
Sometimes because it's just my way of doing things is more different, and LinkedIn expects a certain sort of screen, like what is that, selfie and things like that. But it's not my style, I guess, at this point.
but you also write like substantive content, so I think there's almost a dichotomy between like the thought you have to put into writing an article
Hmm.
or teaching something and then having to flip that into something that's just I don't know a bit not that. So I want to use it corny. Corny is a weird word to use, but I don't know something like that. So uh, yeah, like I've been doing this course for deep learning AI on data engineering, and like
Hmm.
that's I think an example of like content that I like to produce where it's deep, it's hopefully engaging, but it just there's a lot of thought that goes into it. Um, so but it's not ephemeral. Like I think a lot of the content that you see um, these days is very ephemeral. Like you'll forget that you saw it. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's
That's my problem with LinkedIn or Twitter or any social media. It's more kind of fleeting. It's like shouting in the void. I do prefer Reddit. Reddit can be pretty harsh, but I'd prefer Reddit because they're pretty, if it's wrong, they'll call you out, not like LinkedIn. So I
Yeah.
prefer kind of that sort of thing. And Reddit does not like a lot of like influencer type stuff. So they're pretty pretty brutal about that, if I'll say.
I
Then
guess
yeah.
maybe I'll
So,
try out Reddit again. I went in there, and the only time I was really there, I found a post about myself. This is completely an accident, but it was like Joe Reese is in it for the money and to make money from
oh
comics
my
and
god,
book sales. And I was like, this is the most unhinged thing I've ever seen. Let's dive into this. And
it's there.
it must have been somebody I met in Australia who I think was a bit upset that I didn't like give him free consulting or something. He was like, "Oh,
Oh
answer
yeah,
my questions." I'm
that's
like, "Yeah, I'm at a conference. I'm kind of busy right now."
yeah,
But because that was weird. But then that person got dogpiled by a lot of my friends and other people. Then I think the person deleted their Reddit account after.
oh my
So
goodness.
I'm just like, okay, if this is like
Okay.
Reddit, I want
Oh
nothing to do with this. So maybe
yeah,
I'll
sorry,
try
that's
that.
not the usual. That's not my usual experience. Usually they're pretty good, more technical side of things, but
Okay.
I guess those sort of things happen.
What is this place?
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
yeah, I think. Yeah, maybe I'll try it out again. I kind of left it. I don't know. The experience is good.
Bad.
Whatever. I got other
Yeah,
things to do.
sorry to hear that.
My kids will yell at me just the same. I don't need a like some incel like yelling at me. So but it's
Boy.
interesting.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff going on. Like a lot of people wanting to get into data engineering. So much content, and everyone wanting to do projects to get in.
Hmm.
But market is not very good right now. So there's that, and
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a very chaotic time. I feel like people are.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of not a lot of jobs going around. People want to switch jobs, and they're being treated terribly at work. It's at least that's what people are complaining about. No one talks about the good things as much, so there's take that with a grain. Don't people talk about negatives a lot more
Yeah.
than positives online. So yeah, that's just what I'm seeing.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, these are all cycles, right? I mean, you get to
Yeah,
you had a lot of good years, and now you get to have some lean ones, and
take a break, I guess.
yeah, it is what it is. What are you excited about in the upcoming year or two?
uh, well, I'm just exploring different projects that I can work on.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm build my own stuff, I guess. I do sometimes release content, courses, but mostly hoping to build some sort of data provider type stuff. So
Hmm.
just like trying to collect data and provide it to some companies because I think I'm good at it, but we'll see.
That's cool.
I need to figure out what data to collect. So there's that. And yeah, it's like a lot of things going on, but just taking it easy. I had I quit because like I had some like health stuff.
Oh, that sucks.
Um,
Sorry, man.
yeah, but much better now. So it's fine. And there was like a kid and everything. So yeah, taking a break basically.
How old's your kid?
Um, my kid is almost 2. He's
Okay.
gonna turn 2 soon. Yeah. So
Oh boy.
yeah, it's a rough time to do much. So
Yeah, I think two was a lot of work because they're starting to learn the definition, or they're starting to learn the boundaries of the word no, and they're gonna push you. The kid's gonna push you
that's
really
like the
hard on that
terrible
one.
twos.
Well, then you get the terrifying threes. So
Terrifying. Oh my. Oh no. Oh boy.
getting
Okay.
over. Yeah, and I'm saying this as upstairs. I have a kid who's almost 14 and another one's 11.
Mm,
They're both boys, but yeah, I was watching their baby videos last night. I was like, dang, they just grow up so fast, and
yeah,
you blink and then suddenly they're taller than you, and
it's
it's
gone.
weird. And they're on Twitter, and what the hell?
Wow,
So,
that's crazy. Time
yeah,
flies.
it
Yeah.
is, man. But it's cool.
So, what about you? What are you looking forward to this year?
I don't even know, dude. I got to get this book done. This
Mm.
course is coming out in the fall, early fall. So stoked on that.
So this is the deep learning with
Deep learning
machine.
AI one. Yeah.
So what is it about? Like
It's
teaching deep learning to data engineers?
yeah, it's a 16-week data engineering specialty. So it'll
Mm.
be on Coursera.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
nice.
so it's cool working with those guys, the deep learning team, and Andrew Ng, for example, because it's like the standards are just so freaking high for
Mm.
everything. so just yeah, I think it's been like I don't know. I'd been approached by a lot of companies who were interested in doing a course, and I was like, I don't, But when deep learning, asked if they wanted to do, I was like, yeah, absolutely, like not even a question. So I trusted like their process. I mean, if you take an Andrew Ng's courses before, it's like he doesn't, dude does not mess around. That they're awesome.
Yeah.
And working with him, like I was working with him last week, and just sitting there working on stuff. I was like, this dude has such a high acumen and attention to detail. It's just a different ball game entirely. So
That's really good.
yeah, thanks. So that's what I've been hyper focused on this book, and doing that at the same time is like, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but in it. And then this fall, just traveling and speaking. That's about it. So it's like, I don't know, it's super fun.
Nice.
I don't know. But yeah, so that's what I'm excited. I'm excited to take a break at the end of the year. That's what I'm
That's good.
excited about. Yeah. Hopefully.
That's good.
So, yeah. Do you give any talks?
No, I haven't. I mean, there is one coming up at New York DuckDB
Nice.
off, I think. So it'll be like how to use DuckDB with DBT for data transformation. That's coming up. I don't know when. So
Cool.
besides that, no talks.
Okay. Well, if you ever want to give talks, let me know.
Yeah,
I'll push you in the right direction. So
can't travel right now, so I'm not trying. Trying
Yeah.
to stay home as much
Okay.
as I can.
fair enough.
That's the main thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been great chatting with you, man. I guess I've been a big fan of your content for a while, so it's good to finally connect. So we hope we can check more. But
Yeah, I've been a big fan of your book as well. Got it a long time ago. So thank you for doing that.
yeah, anytime.
Nice to finally meet you.
Yeah.
Well, not in person, but
Yeah. So for the audience, this is actually the first time we chatted. So, but hopefully it'll be the first of many. So you're a good guy. So awesome.
thank you.
Well, yeah. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon. So.
You too.
All right.
Bye bye.